and how are you doing today? My name is Richie Richey of the MHRT Network, and you are joining us here on the Wild West podcast on this Wednesday. A huge day today, especially after some pretty big news across all of our teams the last 4 or 5 days anyway. So like I said, I'm Richie Richey of the MHRT Network. Over that way, you have the real Alex Givens, not the fake one, the real one.
Yeah.
From Arrowhead Addict.
The real.
The real.
You'd be surprised how many people got, both my first name and last name. All right. So I had to clarify for social media.
Yeah. Instead
like there's a dude, it's funny though. There's a guy that was like, I think he was a starting tackle at Ole Miss for like 3 years, also named Alex Givens. And I would constantly get tagged in in photos of him. And I'd be like, yeah, this isn't me, but that's fine.
Well, there is a rumor to that because you were a lineman.
I know.
Right.
I'm not 6'6" or 6'7", whatever he was.
But anyways, down directly below, you have Coach Defense of the Lockdown Defense podcast. Staple show every Tuesday with Coach and Kurt, and often bringing in some additional guests there on the Tuesday show. Always great show, great banter, and a great mix between football and NBA and that sort of thing. I'm going to go ahead and shut my door because my dog is not liking
he's going nuts. I think he's mad about it.
My dog. Yeah. Probably mad about all the receivers they cut.
Right.
Well, he is saying I could catch a ball too, right? So,
right.
Yeah. So, anyways, I mean, you're not wrong. The Broncos made some we'll just say interesting moves. These past couple of days. So with that in mind, Alex, I'm going to throw over to you. Let's just do a quick little roundtable. Not much to really say in the last preseason game, but let's at least give a little bit of feedback in terms of how things went and maybe some surprises. Yeah. And I think it also can be a nice little intro bit to say, were there some guys that showed out in that game that maybe played their way onto the roster, which is what we're going to go into next.
Yeah, no, there was absolutely some guys that I'd say play their way, both on and off the roster. And there's also, there were some performances in the game. Overall, they won 33-32. So, it was actually a pretty exciting game in terms of the back and forth. But, that being said, Cleveland also scored 22 points in the first quarter with most of their starters out there, and the Chiefs didn't play really any of them. So, a little skewed. But, big one guy that definitely, would have for sure played his way onto the roster was Emir Smith-Marchette, the receiver from Iowa, who, ironically enough, he had like 4 catches for 101 yards and like a 50-plus yard, touchdown. And Chiefs ended up, it definitely left that game knowing there's going to be a little bit of a controversy in terms of which receiver they're, going to cut, because they had 1 to 2 too many, depending on the amount they chose to go with. So, it's tough to watch a guy perform like that and then wonder what they're going to do. But they ended up trading him actually to Carolina. So turned a guy that was a practice squad player bouncing around, I think undrafted, and give him a chance to have a team, trade and get some draft capital back and give him a chance to go compete somewhere else. I call it a win for both sides. So, and the fact that someone was willing to not wait for the waiver wire tells you that he performed pretty well.
Yeah.
I'd say that was the biggest performer on the offensive side of the ball. There was certainly some other ones, but I'll kind of save that for talking about the, roster cuts, because, it wasn't the most positive result for them, regardless of how they played. And then, on the defensive side of the ball, I'd say the guy that definitely played himself onto the roster and balled out the most in terms of who was in that unit was Cam Jones, who was undrafted guy out of Indiana, like a undrafted linebacker. Came out and had pretty much did the Nick Bolton role. with him not being out there, and had close to, I think, 10 tackles and made the team. So, those were the two guys that certainly performed well. And, I think, those are the two that kind of showed the most. And yeah, you're right, DZ. They kept 7.
Wow.
It is, it is but Judson Ross made the team. So that's, that's exciting to see, what happens with that. But I like to stash 7 wide receivers on my Madden team, but I use 3 of them. So, we'll see what happens with all these weapons. But
stash 7 with injuries off, and you said
with injuries off, no stamina.
You
Don't bleed the stamina. So like they're just there, but
exactly. Bad brother.
Bad Santa.
Bad Santa. Yeah, that's a good one. Bad Santa.
I'm here.
There he is.
Tardiness is apologize, but when you go through a hurricane, and blessings for all of those that really got smacked hard, up in the Panhandle and up into Georgia, and South Carolina got schwacked as well.
Frozen in time, or is it just me?
he's frozen.
Okay.
I think ironically talking about, the weather probably got him. Oh,
no frozen.
This thing on?
Right. Okay, I'm good.
I'm gonna
we're good.
I'm gonna remove you from the stream just for a sec. I'll wait for movement in the background. I'll bring you back.
Good freeze frame though. Somebody just snapped
that. Yeah.
Right.
Alpha 9 40.
There you go.
So anyways,
we got Cat made it on to be recognized as Santa.
Yeah.
Get out.
No, he's obviously just exited there, and he'll be back, I'm sure. But I do agree. It's great that he's fine, and many others are as well. And there were certainly some that really got absolutely demolished by the hurricane there. Thoughts and prayers, obviously, with those people. Here's hoping that the rebuild efforts are quick, and that people didn't lose things that were irreplaceable. That's really the big thing when it comes through storms like this, is to make sure that you protect those things that you cannot replace. So,
indeed,
yeah. So, with regards to your team, Alex, aside from the fact that you intend to single-handedly repopulate the NFL at the wide receiver position just with your team alone, where do you see that going for you guys? Was there a position group that you have now, maybe you're light on as a result of carrying, 80% of your roster being wide receivers at the offensive side of the ball? Like
at 80.
It's a good amount. Honestly, though, they're not. I mean, they kept 25 in terms of offense and defense. And I think they are one less. I'm looking at kind of the rundown. I mean, I think in the term of the total numbers, they're actually one less at like D line, really. The D line, whether that be another end or D tackle, but they kept 5 of each group. So, and they kept a little more linebackers this year. Like last year, they only had 4. So, it didn't really change. It doesn't, like, looking at the people that made the 53, it doesn't look overly light in any spot, considering the fact that there's 7 wide receivers. But, on top of that, there's only 3 tight ends and no fullback this year. So that's probably really where I guess there's your light. First time they've never had a fullback, a true fullback on the roster. So, And someone else on the defensive side is on there that's probably not going to be once they work out, if they work out something with Chris Jones, because he's on the reserve, did not show up list or whatever, so he doesn't count on the 53 right now. And Amenahue as well for his suspension. So there's definitely some guys that probably made the initial team that aren't going to be there for the long haul, but it was interesting to see him keep 7. But I think that I see why they did it, with the fact of, instead of like getting rid of a Justin Watson or something. I mean, just because of some of the guys that are expected, I'd say, to carry the load more than others are not the best at staying healthy. So I think that is a good plan going into the season, to be loaded up, so to speak, on in that room. So
was it the Chiefs? Was it the Chiefs or the Chargers who had a D tackle / fullback?
That's the Chargers.
Yeah. Okay.
The Boise guy.
I couldn't remember because it was one of those things that just, I think I was still in a state of shock, because it's just such a, I mean, it makes total sense, right? Where you'd have a guy that's used to pushing people, who's then on the offensive side of the ball, pushing people.
Right.
Pushing people, right? Like that's
totally like that Ricard for the Ravens.
Yeah.
And he's like their fullback.
Right.
He kind of just plays everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
A bowling ball. But I mean, the Chiefs, it's weird. Like, they've always had a fullback, but it's like, it's more of a special teams position than, I mean, they're not going to get in a power eye or anything, or anything like, and most of the time I feel like when the fullback was out there, he was like in some offset position on the edge of the line to like mess with some defensive alignment or something more than anything else. So it'll be interesting though to see, like, knowing there's not a true fullback on the roster this year, how certain situations and how they may line up against the team will look different. Look a little different. Or if they just like say, F it, like pick the fattest D lineman we have and tell them to just go. I mean, some teams do that. Like, all right, guys, we don't have a fullback. You, the bowling ball, come here, hit that gap, don't stop.
Right.
I was just looking at your roster on the running back side. You really don't have a running back who could even fill that spot either.
Yeah, I mean, the running backs are, unless they're just turning Clyde into a full-blown fullback.
That'll be Fritz.
That'll
be real.
But yeah, I mean, they only kept 3 of those too. So, that was interesting.
I mean, Noah Gray's 6'3", 240, which is like on the short side for a tight end and heavier based on his height.
My guess is it would be Blake Bell in any sort of situation. That they need a full-blown fullback. That would be probably my guess, because he's old enough that they'll like, just go sacrifice your body.
He's also a bigger dude too. He's, I think, in the upper 250s.
Old quarterback,
252.
Old QB at Oklahoma. Converted tight end, stuck around.
So go ahead.
No, I was just agreeing.
And tight ends are also one of those position groups that often act as those slash players anyway. So it's not something that's totally out of the realm.
Well, I mean, I'd be curious to look up how many NFL teams actually have a fullback on their roster.
Broncos.
Well, they took Burton, but honestly, I bet it's less than more in terms of how many actually have a fullback.
When you line it up D linemen and tight ends and and agile O linemen, they're doing that a lot now. They're going 6 O linemen and just making them eligible. They're doing that, and so isn't that they just saving that roster spot? I carry 9 linemen and no fullback versus 8 linemen and a fullback.
That's not a bad idea in my opinion either. that's really what you're using him for anyway. So why not? Actually, I know captain's not here, but that's what the Broncos used Netani Moody for.
Really?
Just have him go be the fridge.
he and the one play that he did it, he sent a dude back like 4 feet.
I don't doubt it.
He was angry.
That refrigerator legs, I don't doubt it.
Yeah, he was angry. So,
and I guess Niners got Juszczyk. I mean, he's kind of like just a freaking little weapon, really.
Yeah, he really is. He's a low key weapon.
He's just a Harvard guy, He just goes out there. Yeah, he went to Harvard.
Did really? Yeah. Oh, that is weird.
He's stuck around and he's done some pretty stellar things in the league.
Wasn't that what was that? Fitzpatrick went to Princeton? Who went to Princeton? What quarterback went to Princeton?
Fitzpatrick's a Harvard guy too.
He's a Harvard guy.
Oh, okay.
Fitzpatrick's a Harvard guy.
There's someone out there right now that I think went to Princeton.
Yeah, there is one guy. I think I don't know who it is, but I think you're right. But any guys that you were surprised that didn't make it
for the Chiefs?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a few. Mainly just kind of, I guess, based off of like how they performed. I mean, the biggest one would be Michael Pirine. He in the preseason, but again, it also probably came down to like the decision to keep 7 or wide receivers. I mean, it's always something like I've had friends that have gone through the preseason process with teams and have been told one of my buddies was in his alignment and they're like, yeah, we were going to keep you, but we ultimately decided to have, an extra running back instead of an extra lineman. So sorry. And no one else calls him. It's just kind of it. So it's, I'm sure that's what it came down to with something like that. Cause I mean, he had 32 yards rushing, like 100 all-purpose yards, and a receiving touchdown. So, I mean, I'd say pretty fully put on display, like a dual threat capability out of the backfield, which is something Reed looks for. And it was a guy they signed this offseason. So I thought for sure he was going to make it. But I also kind of think part of that sign was to see, he's the contingency in place if they were able to move Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I'm assuming they shopped him around, but maybe they didn't. I would imagine they tried. I'd say was one kind of shocking one. And then, on the defense, a couple guys that I don't think were, it was more of like a procedural release than them not being with the team, and they'll come back as practice squad guys. But Deion Bush, a safety that was on the 53 last year. He didn't make he got cut. But I think they've already brought him back I think they've already signed him back to the practice squad. But him and Danny Shelton were the two on the defensive side that definitely, Danny Shelton more specifically, because he was kind of somewhat balling out in the preseason and was kind of the preseason story of the guy trying to make the roster. Every team has someone that their media just like pumps like crazy in the hopes that they get on. So, I mean, that was definitely one too that I thought would maybe stick around and make the 53, especially the Chris Jones situation. But other than that, though, I mean, there really wasn't too many like shocking cuts. They did only keep two QBs on the active roster. So I think that'd probably be the other like shocker cut was Shane Buechele got cut, who was kind of unspokenly in a QB2 battle with Blaine Gabbert. And I thought outperformed Blaine Gabbert and for the most part. But I think ultimately they decided to bring him and Olodokun back on practice squad. And from what I've seen, they're still might be, shopping around for a QB2 and moving on from Gabbert. But other than that, though, nothing really overly wild in terms of what the Chiefs did outside of keeping 7 receivers and not signing Chris Jones. But Other than that, I think pretty straightforward
That's enough.
rundown. Yeah.
That's enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
that's enough right there.
I mean, you may as well just ask the question since you went ahead and brought it up. And since we're talking about the Chiefs in that regard anyway, which is Chris Jones is really taking a fairly big risk if you're going to truly assess it, because yes, it's going to be difficult to replace someone with his caliber of play on the field. So I don't think anyone's going to try to make that argument to say, oh well, Tyreek killed that and move on. He's not that guy. Like, he's a better player in terms of that position group than Tyreek was relative to the position group, right? But at the same time, if the team doesn't start losing a bunch,
yeah, I mean, he loses his leverage.
Then he has no leverage at that point. Like this is actually a much larger risk than I think most people are really giving it credit for.
Yeah, well, I mean, if they come out, I mean, it's gonna go one of two ways. I think if they come out week one and just can't stop the Lions and lose by 10 plus points. The village will be on fire, and they'll probably come to terms, and he'll be back that next week. Or if they come out and it's like full steam ahead and win, in a somewhat dominating fashion, I think he would just come back and play out this year and just hope to get the money he wants on the open market. But he wouldn't make it to that because they probably franchise tag him. So I mean, but yeah, it's definitely I think now, in terms of a staring contest, and who's going to blink first, and yeah, I mean, I don't blame him for pushing for his money. I feel like it's been a weird offseason in terms of a lot of players being very. I feel like a lot of the offseason news has been driven about guys, fighting over their value and stuff like that. So, yeah, I bet he would look a whole lot better than Chandler Jones, right?
Oh!
Ooh! But yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see. I think that's why they kept a few 6 linebackers. So I think that's partially why they kept a couple more than they normally do, is because judging by how the preseason went defensively, I think they're going to be blitzing a lot with linebackers and creating pressure that way. So we'll see what happens with that, man.
I think that makes some sense.
Fingers crossed.
I think it makes sense, but I mean, it's still a huge risk for Jones, and frankly, it's an equal risk even for the Chiefs.
I agree and say the Chief Jones taking the risk.
It's an equal risk for the Chiefs. Like this is what makes it so interesting. There's so few guys that are of his caliber that make it to the position that he is in right now.
Yeah,
like you're talking like a one hand kind of count that are in the spot where he is right now.
Yeah, literally, I think I've said it before. In the last 5-year span, the only people that have had more sacks than Chris Jones are, I think, T.J. Watt and Aaron Donald, and maybe Myles Garrett. But I mean, you're talking about the elite of the elite in terms of pressure on the quarterback and getting sacks.
And most of those guys that you just listed are coming at it from the edge, not the interior.
Yeah. So I mean,
right, and so I mean, I've always been of the opinion, and I haven't made it shy at all, that I think that the interior rushers are even more valuable to a team just because that's the shortest distance to the quarterback.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it gives you the shortest distance.
Yeah.
Somebody's having fun.
I will say the thing with Jones isn't exclusively interior edge rusher though either. I mean, they move him around and he'll rush off the edge, and but I do think he should get the money he deserves. And I mean, as far as what I've seen, like, they're not that far apart, and I don't think he's trying to get more than Aaron Donald money, but I think he wants to be close to that. which I don't blame. See, I got that goes. Okay. Come on, buddy, get down. But yeah, it's a ever evolving situation, and I did not expect it to get to the point of them, putting them on the reserve, did not show up list. You kicked my dog. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Was that Crank Anchors or something?
Yeah, it was.
You kicked my dog.
Oh man. Yeah. And your dog, another dog barking. Crazy. Yeah. Oh man.
Tried to get under it, rip it in the left. The dog was barking,
Yeah. What else? My dog.
He kicked my dog.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd say that's enough for the Chiefs now. Otherwise, people are going to start getting pissed off.
Yeah.
Well,
Farm fans want to know about Chris Jones, though. We wanted to know what would do a situation with going on Chris Jones, because I'm looking at the schedule. Like, honestly, truly, this could drag out. I mean, I think that. I mean, I'm not going to advocate for too hard for Chiefs wins, but I mean, if you look at the schedule, this could.
It's not good. Yeah. And I mean, I don't understand how people aren't, kind of like freaking out about the fact that like a guy who gets 15 sacks per year is not out there, and you gotta basically replace that. It's like the Moneyball scene where like we lost Giambi and Damon here. We got to figure out how to get their numbers back.
Right. I mean, realistically, you think I could get past Detroit and Jacksonville and Chicago without Jones?
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, but once you get to the point of playing your Bengals and Bills, because I think they play both of them again, and
that's later in the
Chargers.
Season. Yeah, the week 4 matchup in New York. That's a good one.
Yeah, I don't know. New York's got such a bad O-line. All those teams I don't think have like the best O-line, and but I don't know. I mean, it's definitely not. It's not a risk I would like to take. It's one that we're certainly taking at this stage. So
yeah.
I don't know. I just think they need to just swap Chris Jones for Nick Bosa. We'll pay Bosa because he's a little bit younger. Then we're good.
Well, all right.
No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, but Bosa drinks girly drinks.
Well, that's Joey. We're talking about Nick.
Well, they are brothers.
That's true.
Lump them all in together, huh?
Yeah, they
drink Prime.
Yeah, they're brothers.
Jeez.
Like, let's put it this way. Like, the Kelsey brothers are kind of the exact opposite.
Yeah, I do not disagree with you, Raider Zach. It's not going to be an easy one.
No.
Yeah, they're much improved over there.
The Lions are I think going to be a pretty low-key entrance into this season, top flight team, in my opinion.
The only thing for me with the Lions is that they got Jared Goff, and he looked all right last year, but
well, as long as he doesn't play outside, he's good.
Yeah,
you play all those games in the dome, he'd be a Pro Bowler.
True.
So you guys are gonna not have. So you're thinking you might have an issue beating Goff.
Huh? I mean, no. Yeah. Oh, beating. Yeah, I got you now. Yeah. Yeah. It's gonna be tough to beat Goff.
Right. Well, him and Mahomes a couple of years ago, they had a nice little shootout when he was with the Rams, didn't they?
Yeah. But I mean, that was a different Rams team. I think they had Gurley, they had Cup, Woods, Watkins, I think, was remotely decent at that point in time.
Yeah. So we've had several comments here in the chat, so I'm gonna jump right into the Broncos, give a very brief last preseason game, which will tie in very nicely into the number one question that has been asked in the chat of me. which so
what are we doing?
Well, yeah. So we basically brought in every wide receiver we possibly could on our team for camp, and then proceeded on the 53-man roster cut down to get rid of all of them, like all of them, except for like 2.
It was literally like Marvin Mims and Cortland Sutton was standing around looking like that meme with both just standing around looking.
Where it's like that Will Smith and Fresh Prince, dude. Just looking at the empty room, like
there you go. Like, where'd my guys go?
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, it was
Thanos snap. They all dusted away.
Yeah,
right.
I was just talking to him.
But it was rather remarkable where, we had, it was easily the largest room in on the team in camp, and then it went down to like nothing. But going in just quickly into the game, there were several players in that last preseason game that either solidified or played themselves onto the roster. And one guy played himself into a trade because he was not making the roster. So I figure I may as well get the elephant out of the room. Alberto went off in the Rams game and made a lot of people look stupid.
And probably got traded.
And then promptly got traded. But I think what a lot of people don't understand is that when you're in a position like that, in terms of Alberto, if you're not an elite route runner, I mean, someone that can just blow the top off of a defense, he is good, but not Greg Dulcich good in terms of speed. So you have this weird mismatch where he's good, but he's not quite good enough. And then his other issue is that he's a big dude, but often struggles in blocking.
Yeah. Well, he came from Mizzou, dude.
Yeah.
They didn't have to block there. That was a sprint.
Yeah. So that was one of his big issues. Now he started improving a little bit in blocking, and I think that's, says a lot about him in terms of the work that he put in. But ultimately, one game of incredible stats against another team's 3s and 4s should not be kind of the thing that you put up in shining lights and use as a reason exclusively for keeping a guy on the roster when he was playing in other games against 1s, 2s, and 3s and did not look the same. Right? So
you're not alone now. The coach just cut their wide receiver room down.
They were making room for Waddle.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Listen. I know Jim Irsay needs to do one thing.
Stay off the weed.
Yeah. I think it's more nose beards for Irsay. Yeah.
What?
I think he's probably got a whole reservation of Quaaludes somewhere.
Yeah.
That he just kept from the 80s. He's like, what are these? Yeah.
Bali. Irsay's on that box.
He's got the Altoids box.
There you go.
You know the Altoids box.
I need my jelly beans.
Yeah.
Where are my jelly beans?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but ultimately, I mean, Alberto had a great game. I think it's great for him. I think he showcased what he can do when he's put in a position where he can actually do well. But ultimately, for those Broncos fans who are tuning in and joining us after the fact or whatever the case may be, I think a pretty good thing to look at was a breakdown of Mark Schlereth. Mark Schlereth, for those who don't know, one of the Broncos' all-time great offensive linemen. Stink, that's right. He did a great breakdown on one of the blocking plays where Albert O was literally moved like 18 yards from right to left.
By trying to block someone?
Yes.
Oh yeah, I mean.
Yeah, he literally started.
Yeah, that'll happen.
Yeah, he started on the outer edge of the line and was actually moved all the way over to the other side of the center.
Well,
Like,
see what happened was
like
to the zoo.
Yeah.
They
So
didn't block.
so again, that's kind of the point, right? Is you can't have that. You can't do that kind of stuff. And for every one-handed catch in the end zone and play that you saw there, you try to put him in an inline blocking spot like that, and then you end up with a blown play, a sack on the quarterback, an injury, whatever the case may be. You can't have that. You just can't. He needs to go to a team where he is that team's Greg Dulcich, where they are not asking him to block in line. They're literally using him as a big slot guy. The Broncos don't need that. We already have a guy that's filling that role. So it just simply made sense to move on. Another guy that has really, really impressed is Alex Plazowski, backup right tackle, although has been starting and getting an awful lot of starting reps for the Denver Broncos throughout camp.
Let's go.
That dude is, as an undrafted free agent, and by the way, Broncos have 4 undrafted free agent rookies that were signed to the 53-man roster, him being one. He lit it up as a tackle, lit it up, and that's fantastic. And I actually expect that he's going to start being rotated in on certain plays and things like that, just because I think they're really looking for him to kind of step in and take over for McGlinchey. So for the first time, the Broncos actually have right tackle depth. Round of applause.
But didn't you guys just pay McGlinchey like $50 million? Like, I mean, pretty savage. Your $50 million man gets beat out by a
undrafted college free agent. Yeah, exactly. But again, you find guys in odd spots, and certain guys just show up and show out, right? And
absolutely.
Another guy, again, undrafted college dude, Nate Adkins. I actually called him out in some of the other Broncos shows that I did not think the Broncos were going to let him walk. He is too good of an all-around player. He was also the guy that I actually think I mentioned on one of our last shows that if either of you guys, if we cut him, you should have signed him. But we did not let him go. And we obviously traded Albert O and decided to keep Adkins as a corresponding move, which I believe is the right one. I think Adkins has got a tremendous upside for us as a team. Alex, you mentioned an interesting thing for the Chiefs, which kind of a bit of deja vu for me as a Broncos fan. We ended up keeping Jarrett Stidham, but if you're going to
Danucci's gone, baby.
Well, he's on the practice squad now.
Danucci. He's going to go back to the Sea Dragons.
But if you actually looked at how Stidham performed outside of that last preseason game, Danucci actually outplayed Stidham, which is very deja vu to kind of what you were saying about the QB2 role for the Chiefs there. And so I saw a lot of similarities in terms of what the Chiefs were going through and what the Broncos were going through. Is Stidham really stepped up in the last game, but when he went up against stiffer competition, Danucci played better.
Yeah. I wonder though, so I haven't looked into this that as much as probably should have up to this point, but so there's like the new rule with you can carry 3 QBs, but the third one, it doesn't count towards your active roster, right? So like these guys like your Danucci or Buechele that they bring back to the practice squad, they're going to be there game day.
Yeah.
They just don't count. So, I mean, so some of that's kind of a formality.
It is.
But,
it is. And it is. And I think that obviously Stidham probably would have not come back if we had cut him.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, who knows?
Because he would have probably commanded a bit more money from another team just because he has a name. And he had multiple suitors in the offseason. So I think he would have said, I want more money, so on and so forth. And another undrafted guy, which again, the Broncos are just kind of got him all over here, is Jaleel McLaughlin.
McLeod.
He
Sarah McLeod.
The good news is they have spelt his name correctly now since the first preseason game where they actually misspelt it on his jersey, which was hilarious. They they put MCG like McGlinchey and then added the L after. And so it was clearly a whoopsie by somebody.
Whoopsie.
Yeah, but he has shown out. Absolutely shown out. He has shown patience. He's run through the tackles despite his size. Pass pro, all of the above. Super impressed with how he's played. And then we had a defensive guy that ended up making it in Thomas and COME as the left outside linebacker who's on the back end of that depth chart, but nonetheless made the 53-man roster and made some nice plays actually for us in the last preseason game. So he'd be a great example of someone, I believe, who played himself onto the roster because that's a position that you can never have enough depth at. And Jonathan Cooper is proof that you can find incredibly skilled depth at that position even later in the draft, as long as they put in the work and do the right things. I mean, Cooper right now is by and large slated to be a rotational guy in the starting lineup at least. And he was a 7th round pick. So, I mean, that is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Right. And you're right, Avatar, he did. It was his cousin's dream to be an NFL player. And McLaughlin had picked up the torch, so to speak, for his cousin once he passed away and made it his mission to make the NFL on behalf of his cousin. McLaughlin also has a very interesting story in terms of trials and tribulations to even get to the place where he is right now. Highly recommend checking out his story. To say it's inspirational would be an understatement. I don't even want to ruin it for people. Go.
Will it be a movie?
No, it's legit. You know, it's
I'm
gifted. It's gifted basically for a film to be made of it. It's pretty spectacular. So I highly recommend going and reading up on that. Aside from that, one of the surprise things for me on the roster was that we didn't keep Aaron Patrick. He's an outside linebacker who is a special teams ace for us. He got hurt in the Chargers game. Coach, you may recognize him. He was number 94. He got hurt on the sideline. Wears number 94 and quite literally looks exactly like DeMarcus Ware. He wears he was a Denver Bronco player, but got hurt in the Chargers against the Chargers last year.
Oh, last year. Okay, we didn't play out in preseason.
He's like, what are you talking about?
Right, I was like, huh?
No, I'm just saying is that
Joe Montana's a quarterback.
You might recognize him because he got hurt in the sideline when we played the Chargers last season.
I got you now. Now I do remember that now. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
Yeah. He's kind of like a big. He's like a big looking dude. He's just like jacked.
Yeah. Right. Like you're right. He does resemble DeMarcus Ware in those pads.
He does. Right about that. Yeah, it's like you kind of do a double take almost when you first look at him.
Right.
Does he sing like him though?
I thought he's in the Hall of Fame. I think he could play.
Sing like DeMarcus Ware.
And so those are kind of the big ones in terms of interesting pieces. And I kind of already hinted at it. Like the Broncos basically cut almost all the wide receivers.
It's just and all their kickers and traded for a kicker. That was kind of interesting.
Well, you know what that was about. That's just
that's step one.
Yeah.
Now, next week, boom, conditional 7th for Taysom Hill. He's in.
Yep.
Week after that, another conditional 7th for Jimmy Graham.
It's
Jimmy Graham on. Yeah. Michael Thomas could stay. He's
too much of a diva. They didn't like what they had to deal with him.
Yeah, that wasn't Peyton's guy. Now Marquise Colston, he might bring him out of retirement.
That right there.
That's his guy.
It was wild though. They cut Marquise Callaway. I thought Callaway was Peyton's guy.
I said that to Richie before the show. I was like, damn, they did him dirty.
Well,
and did you
and
see
they kept
Doug Peterson cut his son? So I mean,
well, yeah, it's a
Cold
cut the
world.
world out here.
Old world.
Comment. They said that the GM might like it, but his wife's not. His
When
wife
I
don't
saw
like it.
with that though, I clicked on that just thinking like, damn, like that's kind of savage. But then I saw like they had a highlight of him trying to long snap, and he like snapped like a duck ball. Like it just looked terrible.
Oh,
So
wow.
it's basically like, yeah, I mean, his dad tried to throw him a bone, like be like, I hope you can learn the long snap. We might keep you, but otherwise,
Otherwise,
you're
gotta
gonna
go.
be a coach.
Yeah, so
Right.
this is now our third kicker since cutting McManus.
Jesus. I think
Dude,
I'd
and
go-
there was like 3 kicker trades yesterday.
I know.
It was
all
like
round picks.
Like Chargers traded, Denver, New England sent a kicker. Like,
yeah, I was
what's
just
going
shocked that we traded that our kicker away for 7th. I was like, wow, shouts out to the front office. That we usually don't. We just cut people. We don't even bother trading them.
But I think that a lot of people have to recognize that a kicker puts up arguably the most points on your roster out of any one player.
Yeah, one player. Yeah, absolutely.
And of any one player. And I mean, the quarterback is the facilitator of probably more points, but
I think in terms of point scoring, it's always the kickers.
Always the kicker, exactly. Yeah.
Outside of like McCaffrey or Kamara going off.
Yeah.
But you're not wrong.
Yeah. So that's a very important position, and I think it's undervalued by many, and I think it's something to keep in mind.
So I would hate to be a kicker though. Like a kicker or a goalie, because it's like I feel like those are the only 2 positions in sports where if you make the kick, stop the goal, like no one really cares. You did your job, you know.
And then if you miss it,
like, if you miss it, it's like you blew this. Like it's just there's no second chance. There's no redo. There's no praise. Just like
coming back.
They don't get they don't get the quarterback treatment, right? Like they don't get that quarterback treatment when they do well.
Yeah,
but they basically get the absolute lambasting when they mess up.
Oh yeah, but everyone does it, dude. I mean, we had a kicker.
They ain't calling plays. They ain't remembering offensive sets. They ain't doing nothing.
Well, and I think I'd say like. I say that, but like I absolutely did that to our kicker in school, and he missed a kick. I'd be like, "What the f are you doing?" And it's like I think part of that's because you watch how they practice, which is doing nothing at all, and then going up to the top of the hill there and punting balls for 30 minutes and leaving, and you're like, "Yeah, you should do something. Like you should do a little better here." Or like probably in the NFL, they probably do this close to the same stuff. I mean, I'm sure there's a little more to it, but it's like, dude, you're making $2 million to kick a ball. Like, come on.
Right. Yeah.
Well, it's very similar to what Peyton said in one of his pressers when they dropped a bunch of passes during the preseason game. He goes, "They're being paid to do one thing.
Yeah.
I expect them to at least do the one thing."
Yeah.
Right. So, yep. I mean, that pretty much is by and large, where the Denver Broncos are at. Not too many other, major surprises. I do expect that we're going to start seeing some churn on the active roster in the next couple of days for the Broncos. So I do expect at least 1 or 2 more moves. I think we're going to need at least one more wide receiver. So expect something to come out of the,
I was a little sad to see them do my boy Tyler Batty like that, but
he's on our practice squad.
Yeah, he's a good little running back. He's a good athlete.
Oh, he's hurt. Oh, okay.
He's hurt. So we basically did him a solid by wanting him to come back, having him come back on the practice squad, and he's got to basically heal up.
Okay,
but he is hurt. He's hurt, but I like him a lot, actually. In fact, I posted something on X. Yeah, there was some. Yeah, yeah.
Now that I'm looking at ESPN's depth chart, though, there he is. I was like, I don't see a fullback on here.
And then we got Burton.
Yeah, he's there. He's nestled in there.
Yeah. So we got 3 running backs. Those are the 3 that I predicted, and then I had the 4th running back being Burton, which is kind of how I thought it would all shake out. And I did actually call the fact that we were going to carry 4 tight ends. Peyton just loves his 12, 13 personnel sets too much.
Yeah.
Like you know what I mean? Like you just have to carry 4 if you're going to play 2 tight ends that regularly. You just have to, because you're going to have injuries. So it is what it is. And yeah, we got some issues with injuries big time. I think that what will be interesting, truly interesting, is sorry, I'm just going to pull up DZ's comment here. Pay attention to the new guys that we brought in. So like guys like Nate Adkins, guys like Plazowski, like look at the newer guys we brought in, because those are the ones that are going to be under the tutelage of the new strength and conditioning coaches and didn't get bad habits given to them by the former regime. So they will be better proxies in terms of what we can start seeing from the new regime. And we're going to go from there. Right now, though, yeah, I'm not a fan. Not a fan at all.
Big, hey, from a fantasy perspective, huge Marvin Mims guy now, because no one else there. So
I was high on Marvin Mims as a sleeper before that. Now he just keeps riding.
Now he ain't nobody's sleeping anymore. We're awake.
Exactly.
Well, the one thing to keep in mind is you saw him against the other team's 3s and 4s.
Yeah, but
what's he going to look like when he's against 1s and 2s? And more importantly, what's he going to look like, or what's our offensive line going to look like when they are against 1s and 2s of the opposing team? That all plays a huge role into how a guy like Mims can do in the offense. And on top of that, here's a not so secret, which is a Peyton offense and team typically starts poorly and ends well. True. So expect the Broncos to probably not look great early on, and then kind of as the season goes on, he'll make adjustments and then start doing better.
What's crazy though, and I feel like they're playing a dangerous game with the limited receivers you have. They got Mims returning kicks too. He's your second guy on the depth chart.
That's kicks. Yeah. Are they actually doing that?
He's the kicker, returner, and punt returner. He was doing it all preseason. Man, so
maybe Sean Payton's just gone full Urban Meyer on us, and he's like kicking them in practice, like get healed.
You know,
having a workout at midnight.
Harking back to the league line, like obviously Peyton's thinking, I don't know what the hell he's thinking.
Welcome to Major League Baseball.
Right. Sort of.
Yes. There are only 4 wide receivers on Denver's roster.
Welcome to the Denver's wide receiver room. Sort of.
Yeah. I'm telling you, it's like a Thanos snap.
Right. They just wheeled it away.
Coach wants to see you. Get your playbook. All 5 of you right there.
We have 5. We have 5. We have 5.
Yeah. You got 6 on the roster. There's only 3 that aren't on the IR, are questionable. But I'm looking at ESPN, so maybe that's a little.
No, you're right, Biggie. What you saw from Peyton was vanilla versions of an offensive scheme. No scouting of the opposing defense to pair together the offensive scheme with. So yeah, you're correct actually with this comment. But some things that you have to understand as well is we were also playing against lesser than competition.
Dorsett is washed, Jack.
So.
Yeah, they did get Dorsett today, didn't they? Yeah.
Dorsett's been on like 8 teams in 4 years, though.
Yeah.
You know?
That he has. He fast.
Got drafted in the first round because he ran a 4.3, and
yeah,
he got Hayward Bade. Really, like people thought, oh, he's fast, he'll be all right.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But either way, I just think that you're going to have to look at multiple factors before we start pumping up the Broncos. The offensive line did not look particularly great in the preseason, even with the starters out there. We saw multiple plays get blown up, all that kind of thing. Now, can they do better? Sure, probably. But they have not looked great, and they should be looking better than they are, even with the vanilla plays, because a blocking assignment is a blocking assignment, right? Like, it just is what it is. And you got to remember is that we also had games where our starters were going against the opposing team's 2s and 3s, and we're still getting pushed around. That's not good. So, going against the Chargers front line or the Chiefs front line, or, even the Raiders have a much better D line. They have some true stars on their D line. We got to be careful.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So,
but I think it will be. I mean, I think it's obvious, right, that by looking at how different the Broncos, especially offensive side of the ball, is, like, Peyton clearly has a vision, or you would hope he does,
yes,
for how he's gonna, fix Russ or fix the offense production. So, I mean, I think you just got to have faith that it's going to be, he's got a plan, and I would think too that they cut all those guys. Like, there's got to be someone they're either targeting via trade, or some. I mean, you would think there's maybe someone, because I mean, there's 2 of them right now that are on the IR. So I mean, to me, wouldn't that once the waivers and stuff hash out, doesn't that mean they would in theory have 2 more spots until these guys are? I mean, for 4 weeks.
Yeah, well, we kept a lot more defensive players because a lot of those guys we did not want to get picked up by other teams.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay,
so, like, as an example, like to kind of speak to what you're saying there, we kept 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 safeties.
That's a lot.
That's a lot of safeties, right? And like, PJ Locke is a really good player, but so Turner Yell was a guy that I didn't really cover earlier, but he played his way onto the roster. He was too good to let go.
Damn, you guys got Tremont Smith?
Yes.
I forgot he was there.
Yeah. So, like, we kept the defensive players to fill out that defensive room, and that's where the extra guys came from. And some of those guys they were too good to let go to go to another team, because they would have been picked up for sure.
Damn, y'all 7 corners and 6 safeties? Sheesh.
Yes.
Rotations, baby. Rotation.
I think that gives you a little idea of how they want to play special teams.
Yeah.
They want to go for speed over kind of pushing around. So they're gonna have, rather than the wide receivers go on special teams, they want safeties and corners and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
To be on the special
I mean,
team.
I would rather have that too.
I agree.
So, for 11, they tackle. So you don't want wide receivers to do tackles if you don't have to.
Yeah, exactly.
Wide receivers, dude, are prima donnas. Most of them are they don't want any contact.
Yeah, and then K'Wan Williams is a likely IR candidate. So he's just had surgery, and Issam Bassi again played his way onto the roster and solidified his spot with basically a pick plus in every game.
Who's the safety from Indiana, Richie? Do you know?
Indiana. I don't know about Indiana. We got Delarian Turner-Yell, PJ Locke, JL Skinner. I'll be honest, I don't know their colleges.
I'm looking
I don't see anyone's from Indiana, but
who said they got a receiver from Indiana? Who said that?
Raiders Zach.
Oh, okay.
Johnson.
Huh? I don't see it.
Hang
Doesn't
on.
look like it.
We talking the Raiders. We talking about the Raiders or the Broncos?
We're talking about the Broncos, I think, unless I'm misspeaking here. Talking about Johnson?
No.
Maybe he got cut. Let me look here.
No.
Safety, Kabad.
No.
Ooh, Fabian Monroe.
The Raiders or the Broncos got one from Indiana.
No, I don't think we ever had a guy from Indiana.
Indiana's not even a state. 5th round pick last year.
We had one last year, but he was cut.
Ooh.
So sorry, you mean was it DeMar Johnson? I think that's his name, right? DeMar Johnson.
DeMar Johnson, the coldest safety in the league. Darren Sharper.
Let me just give me 1 second. Let me see.
I got a draft here in 19 minutes. 3rd pick. Who should I target, chat?
So, anyways, Coach,
let's start the madness.
Right.
Coach, let's talk about your Chargers, and we will go from there.
Oh, time for me to go on my rant?
Yes, please go for
rant.
it. And by the way, I am prepared.
Okay.
I have an idea of where you're going to go, so have at her.
Well, I mean, you follow me on Twitter. I'm pretty sure you know.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I was a little tight in the chest about certain things the Chargers did. In the cut down. Yeah. I didn't understand a whole lot of it. But I'll start with the preseason game just to keep the
keep it
the
light.
theme of the show. Keep the theme of the show going. And honestly, truly, I would honestly say that, and I think this is just for the league in general. Like, I think we need to cut down to 2 preseason games. I found out that the 3rd game is really a filler. Like most people
it's
don't
even
play
crazy that it used to be 4, like 3 years ago.
Before, yeah, it was 4, right?
Like,
I think we need to go all the way down to 2 because that 3rd game, man, like it was either one of 2 things. Like, if you either played your starters early and then you didn't play them late, or you didn't play them at all until the last game and you only played them for 2 series. But regardless, most of it in retrospect was a showing of guys that are mainly not going to make the roster or play special teams. So you didn't get to see a whole lot, as far as a development and scouting perspective when it comes down to these games in week 3. And I can tell, and just my playing days, my coaching days, I can just tell when a coach is really trying to get out of a game and not get anybody hurt. Because I really feel like that's what the Chargers and we're doing in part of week 2 and week 3. They were just trying to get out of the game.
Coach, this was not even something that you needed to decipher. All you needed to do is go ask McVay on the Rams side. He literally said exactly that. They said, Coach, what are you looking for today? For the game to be over and no one getting hurt. That was literally what he said on the sideline.
We're on to Cincinnati.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
What you think out there?
I mean, this profuse and utter clock burning that happened in the second half of the Chargers game was just, it's just obvious that they were just trying to get out of the game. I mean, once they got up on the Niners, they was like, hey, let's just run the ball and get out of here. They wouldn't let Max Duggan throw. The commentator even said it. They handed the ball off like 9, 10 play times. I haven't seen the Chargers do that in like 10 years. We have to harken back to the LT days when they handed the ball off that much in a row.
They had like 50 passing yards.
That's what I'm saying. Like the last 2 games, there were no passing yards to be had. It is anything noteworthy in the second half of either game. So that's why I say, I think that between the inter squad scrimmages and the because a lot of times the teams come in, Tuesday and Wednesday and they practice all week together and then they play each other. I just think you need to have a week of that and just do inter squad stuff and just have 2 preseason games because again, there was not a lot to glean from a talent perspective when it comes down to who you feel like was going to play themselves onto the roster like Richie said or play themselves out. So, for me, it wasn't a whole lot of anything to glean from that game. Again, it was 23-12, outside of that one big run by Josh Kelly early on in the game was pretty pedestrian when it comes down to what the game was about in the second half. Like I said, they were just trying to get out with no injuries. But, we literally got out of camp, thankfully, and prayerfully that we definitely stay healthy throughout, but we definitely got through with minimal risk and for coming down to injury. But like I said, wasn't a whole lot to be had from the game perspective. Now, when we get down to the idea of what they did from a roster perspective, they unceremoniously cut Max Duncan, and I don't even think that man hadn't had an opportunity, really a chance to make the roster because again, he didn't play at all in the second preseason game, and he wouldn't let him throw in the third. So how would you supposed to gauge his in-game potential if he didn't get a chance to do anything noteworthy in the preseason?
He got given the stick.
Yeah.
He got given the stick.
He's sticking around.
Which again, that bothers me.
I don't know, man, but I think too that you can kind of tell without game, just in practice, like if a QB is going to be able to be a contributor in the league or not. Then, I mean, it might have just been something like that.
Well, I mean, if that's the case, then you cut him outright. They brought him back on the practice squad, which makes this really head scratching to me as well, because you still feel like you want to spend some time with him and develop him, but you voided his 4-year contract as a 7th-round pick by cutting him to bring him back on a practice squad deal. Don't make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Don't make a lot of sense when you got Easton Stick on a 1-year deal as your backup, who is terrible. I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you, he's not good. So again, with him being a quote unquote backup and Duggan being the emergency guy, I think that you were hope and pray that you want to.
You should have reversed those. You should have inverted them. You should have inverted them. You should have.
That's the point I'm trying to get to. That's the point I'm trying to get to. You should have kept Duggan on his 4-year cheap deal and let Easton Stick be the emergency guy. That's what you should have did. Because again, there was no guarantee money in Easton Stick's deal in a 1-year avenue. So why wouldn't you not do that? So that part bothered me. It didn't make financial sense. It didn't make developmental sense because you clearly don't feel like Easton Stick's going to stick around if you don't give him a 1-year deal to begin with. Second of all, you drafted Duggan for a reason. Why would you not keep him on a cheap 4-year deal? And then again, you can work with him and develop him, and he's still learning the playbook. Everybody's learning to play from ground zero. We just got a new OC. So again, I didn't understand that part either.
And now you got to re-sign him.
Well, I don't know.
If you actually like him, you have to re-sign him now at the end of the year.
Again, what was the issue with? I mean, a 7th-round contract is not expensive. It's not. So why would you waste that money?
The check is on one.
Right.
Pretty sweet.
It didn't make a whole lot of sense though. I didn't understand it, but I'm not going to dwell on it. I just didn't understand why they didn't keep Duggan on the roster and let Stick be the emergency guy. Because again, I can see if Stick was doing Will Grill numbers where he just blew away everybody in the preseason. He just put up these gaudy numbers in the pass game. But Easton Stick was terrible in the preseason stat wise. He's one of the worst quarterbacks in the preseason. So why are you putting your head on him? I don't get it.
I actually have the numbers for you. This may make you even more angry, but hey,
I'm already. It's not going to send me.
I don't want to hear
it. So basically, his 7th-round draft contract in totality was $3.9 million.
Yeah,
for 4 years.
For 4 years, which meant his average per year was less than $1 million average per year. Less than $1 million.
Exactly.
But is the contract
change?
Is the contract cheaper though? Just the minimum, if they're not like veteran minimum, is it cheaper? So like in theory, they might save money if they just re-sign them. I don't know enough about how the contracts work to know because I know the veteran minimum's right at $1 million, but I'd imagine a rookie on the minimum wouldn't get $1 million.
Easton is making $1.2 million.
You're right.
So
$750,000, I believe, is the minimum for a rookie.
So I guess maybe that's give him a year to see if he develops, and in the long run, they probably would sign him to cheaper. And I don't know.
Yeah, but then here's the kicker, though. And then basically, the Chargers have technically saved money, but I think rookie deal, guaranteed.
I don't know. That's something I need to look into more, is like the actual inner workings of how these contracts work.
Again, it's staggered. So a 7th-round pick signing bonus isn't high. It's very cheap.
Probably
very little money. It's all a lot of salary and very little guaranteed money. So again, you basically screwed him financially, and again, he's only making a practice squad money now, and the very little bit of money he got in guaranteed is going to go to taxes.
Right.
He lives in LA, so he's going to go to taxes.
Right.
So it was a very hair stretching move for me. Again, I'm not going to dwell on it, but I didn't understand it at all. I'm assuming he's going to be the emergency guy, and why you keeping him around in the practice squad, you're elevating him on game day. But but if you dig deeper into the moves they made, going down a list, so you carry 2 quarterbacks, which I don't agree with you carrying. Then you carry 4 running backs. That part I didn't get either. I didn't understand it either. Austin Eckler and Josh Kelly on their last year of their deal. What's the guy, kid's name? Isaiah Spiller. He's on the second year of his deal, and then you got in a UDFA that you brought in off the street, basically, who balled out in the first preseason game, so you kept him. So keeping 4 running backs, which I mean, I don't see the need for 4 running backs. I mean, if you run through 3 running backs in the season, I'm sure there's plenty of people on the practice squad or waiver wire that you could pick up to come in at some point. So why would you waste a roster spot on a 4th running back? I issued with that last year, and I issued with it this year because you could have kept somebody else that's more vital to the roster, like a cornerback, versus having a 4th running back who's not going to play. And again, you're looking at it from a special team perspective. Again, he's not a defensive player. I would keep a corner or a safety because guess what? He actually plays special teams. He actually can tackle. What a running back going to do on special teams? Much or nothing.
Yeah.
You also bring in a guy to develop behind one of your key guys. You bring in a guy to develop behind one of your key guys, and then you leverage the fact that he's got that experience, and then you trade him for cash or capital. Right? The good teams trade their depth for back end draft picks to then bolster your team, right? That's
but
what
again, so now the Chargers they aren't known for that. But I'm with DZ. I think they were looking at it from Dotson having that one breakout performance. They feel like if he went to the practice squad, he was going to get picked up. So maybe okay, but again, I would still hedge my bet on a guy that this UDFA. I mean, again, there's other running backs out there that you get to fill a void if you lose 3 running backs due to injury. Thankfully, hopefully we don't. But I think that's a bet I would hedge my bet on that. I wouldn't bank on the fact that I'm going to lose 3 running backs. That's just my personal opinion. But yeah, them keeping 4 running backs and keeping 4 tight ends. Now, that could go back to your point, Richie, about them running a lot of 2 tight end sets that Kellen Moore wants to do per se. But again, my issue with that is you're keeping 4 tight ends if they're quality. The 2 of the 4 we have are in quality, in my opinion.
Who's catching the ball?
Everett and Parham. Other 2.
But that's my point. Who's catching the ball? Right? Like that's why you keep guys like that, is because they're elite pass catchers or some variation of it.
I'm not gonna hang my hat on that either. I don't think that Trey McKinney or Stone Smart are really good pass catchers. I don't.
Yeah.
And they're not really willing blockers either. They're not, I mean, we're not talking Kittle Gronkowski level blocking, either. So I don't get the idea of them keeping those guys either. You see, that's 2 roster spots that I thought that could have gone elsewhere, and the 4th running back and the 4th tight end. And then you keep a 33-year-old defensive tackle over a 24-year-old UDFA who had promise and showed good signs in the preseason. You keep Nick Williams, who's a 33-year-old guy on the roster, who's on a 1-year deal, but Gerard Clark gets cut and goes to the practice squad. When I saw more flashes of Gerard Clark in the preseason than I did ever at Nick Williams at all. I didn't even know Nick Williams was on the field most of the time. That's how bad it was. So that's a head scratcher. And then they're carrying 5 safeties. I didn't get that either, because I felt like we could have kept 6 corners instead of 5, but instead they kept five safeties. But yet again, that goes back to my argument about the 4 tight ends. If you keep 4 safeties because you feel like they're quality, like if I had Caden Stearns, and Justin Simmons and then guys are like that, and I got 3-4 of those type of guys, then I get it. But I mean, outside of J.C. Woods, who's improving, Alohi Gilman and Derwin James, the other 2 guys I didn't understand. And they cut Cam Brown. Cam Brown was a Division I cornerback for Ohio State, who was a UDFA. I didn't understand him cutting either. He showed flashes in the preseason. He had a pass breakup in every preseason game, at least one. And a couple of ones should have been interceptions, but he didn't bring the ball in.
You keep those guys.
You keep that guy.
I agree. Keep that guy.
I agree, and I didn't understand it. I don't understand why they didn't keep Cam Brown over a guy like AJ Finley, who they kept as a safety, who we never heard of. I've never heard of AJ Finley until he got to the Chargers. I never knew who the guy was.
I don't even know who you are, bro.
Right. Shout out to Aaron Rodgers. Shout out to Aaron Rodgers. So I didn't understand the idea of them keeping AJ Finley over Cam Brown either. And AJ Finley's a little bit older. Cam Brown is a rookie. So if I'm gonna take a chance on a guy, I'm gonna go younger. You know, if it's close in talent, I'm gonna go younger because I can develop the younger guy. But the older guy, he's pretty much set in his ways. He is who he is at this point. He's not changing much.
So, Coach, is part of your reason for this? I mean, this is my reason for. I'm not gonna lie. I read your tweets. It's like they actually did that.
Who hurt you?
That's bizarre to me. Which is, so the Chargers have this mentality on your offensive line, which is build depth, build the starters, and then get even more depth. Right? And so it's not like your team is the Broncos and says, screw that depth. We don't need any of it. Like the Broncos have been notoriously awful at depth at multiple positions on our roster before, right? Like that's just our thing, is we kind of have like a good guy and then no one behind him to develop. The Chargers have a mentality where you guys have good depth and you've shown that you understand the value in that.
Well, just on the offensive line.
Sorry.
Just the offensive line.
Right.
That's the one place that I can honestly say that's true. In the wide receiver room. No, not last year. This year they value it more so this year.
Right, but the point is you've shown that you understand the concept.
So why doesn't it apply to every group?
So why doesn't it apply everywhere else?
I don't know.
Why? I don't understand.
I don't know. I don't get it. That's why I'm shaking my head and ranting on Twitter, because I'm like, what are we doing here? Like, this one, you feel like you're taking 3 steps forward, you take 2 back. I didn't understand it. I personally, like I said, I would have kept a younger 23, 24-year-old guy who I can work with and who was cheaper than an older guy. That's just my opinion. Yeah. Just from a D-line perspective. Because again, Gerard Clark is 330 pounds. He just takes up space. And your biggest woe last year was run defense. So wouldn't you rather have a 35 pound behemoth, a guy that you got to double team every single play, versus a guy that's 33 years old, on the back end of his career, and didn't show you much of anything flash-wise in the actual games? I don't know what he's doing in practice because I'm not there. But what he's doing in the game, I mean, I get experience in the league matters to a degree. But this guy been on like 4 teams in his whole career. Like, he's been bounced around on several different occasions. The Giants, the Browns, a few other teams. So, again, the experienced guy who isn't doing anything versus the young guy, I'm going to go with the young guy. That's just my personal opinion.
I agree.
So that's it. I didn't understand why we're carrying 5 safeties, 4 running backs, 4 tight ends. Why you're not carrying 6 corners? Because, again, all these receivers out here, especially in the AFC, you need guys to cover them. And J.C. Jackson isn't guaranteed to play week 1. Why don't you carry more corners rather than safety?
Waiting is long for your
I didn't get it.
pick. You're coming away from these first 2 rounds with a stellar.
Sorry, that's a Yahoo freaking video.
Okay, so what is that? Yeah, so yeah, I didn't get the idea of what they decided to do in the end game of the roster moves, but let's hope it works out. That's all I can really say.
So, are there any things in there where you're looking at that and saying, "Oh no"?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's funny. DZ made the same point. Like, Clark is a nose tackle, a person we really needed, a position we're sorely in need of, and the one we have as a reserve is on the PUP list right now, so he's going to miss the first 4 games. So why would you keep Clark versus keeping Nick Williams? I didn't understand it. I really didn't understand it. But yet again, I mean, we'll see how things shake out. But I'm still concerned about our front. I really am. I mean, because I feel like the guys they have who are, starters, they're not world-beating run defenders. Let's just put it that way.
Well, that was a weakness last year as well.
Right, exactly. So why would you?
So it's not like you guys had like this elite room that you could say, no, we got to keep the band together, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm a little concerned about that, but I mean, yet again, being healthy, it plays a part of that, but having talent also plays another part.
Yeah, for sure.
If Jackie's not hurt, they just slowly bring him back there. I'm not sure if he's going to play week 1, but he'll play most of the season. They're just trying to be cautious with bringing him back, to a full workload at the moment.
But I mean, he also got hurt played and got more hurt last year, right?
One of those, huh?
JC, right? So he's not necessarily one of those guys that you hope he can play, but you haven't seen it yet on your team.
Well, yeah, he had an elective surgery done in the preseason last year, which came out like week 1. And then he played, 4 to 5 games.
And he had the foot thing.
And then he got hurt.
Yeah, then he got towards patella tendon. Yeah, so that was the end of that. But
yeah,
up to that point, it's ironic. Up to that point, he hadn't had any injuries in his career.
Oh,
so
we're going.
Yeah, so
you just don't really know what you're going to get with him yet on your team.
And you want to be careful about it. You don't want to, based on the amount of money invested in him, you want to be sure that he's 100%, he's full on and ready to go. Because you don't want to rush him back and he injures himself again and then he's still stuck.
Agreed. So I think it's a super, this is one of the more interesting times for me because you start getting an idea of your head coaches and GM's ability to work together. And really what is, where it really starts to come to fruition is wait till game 4. Right? Because you just wait till game 4. Like you know exactly where I'm going with this too, right? Which is you wait till game 4.
This dude took Bijan #1 overall. What an idiot.
Wow. That's crazy.
What an idiot.
Over Justin Jefferson and a bunch of
I hope this guy takes Jamar and I can just get Jefferson, right? I'm getting one of the two. I mean, that's happening.
Right.
Yeah.
I can't believe I love these.
Yeah. Ultimately, I think what the interesting thing here is you get a good idea of whether or not your head coach and your GM are on the same page.
Yep.
And so the question is Staley being undermined by the GM of the Chargers? And vice versa, I don't think Reed's being undermined necessarily by his GM because, they've been working together for a number of years now. But, in Denver, same thing with Peyton and Peyton here are the Broncos. So what's happening? Oh,
I just took Jamar, baby. We're good.
It's weird because, you were pretty, in lockstep or, pretty much on the same page in offseason and what changed? Because let's be honest, the coach's job is to evaluate the talent and give his recommendation on who we should keep and who we should not. So I think ultimately that particular cut down decision comes down to the coaches because they're seeing what who's valuable, what they value, and who they don't. So again, it could be one of those things where Telesco was the one running the show in the offseason, bringing the guys from the drafts, trades, or whatever the case may be. But when it comes down to talent, there might be a disconnect because he's leaning on what the coach says. And coach says, I want to keep this guy over this guy. And then Telesco might be scratching his head like, are you sure? And he's like, yeah. And then boom, there you have it. So, because there's not much you can, when you're dealing with a GM, he's more of the business guy. They're not, most GMs are typically not, straight up football guys.
No.
So you're leaning heavy on the coach to give you those, yay or nays, who you keep and who you don't. So you have to look at that from that perspective. So these decisions literally might be driven by, Staley and his coaching staff, and they might be making the wrong decisions. It might be just that.
Yeah, and I completely agree with a whole whack of your assessments. I'm going to be very curious to see. Let's give it, say, like just before the regular season game, and once all the other teams have kind of solidified their rosters and practice squads, whether or not you guys start shifting some of those players around and or signing additional guys and churning out the practice squad guys to then start calling guys up to kind of fill out your 53-man. For example, you go after and target a tight end, bring him on your practice squad, and then call him up for the first game and then make a roster swap, after that first game. Like those are all things I can see happening, right?
With these the Jets cut Zach Kuntz. I'm with that move.
Yeah. Hey, that's someone I want the Chiefs to look at too. I mean,
he's a free guy.
Kind of a project guy, but he's 6'8", isn't he? Like he's huge.
440. Yeah. Sign me up.
Yeah,
So
you can work with that.
I can work with that. So
that's Parham though.
But it's right. I mean, but he's a little heavier than Parham though. He's a little heavier than Parham. Parham is like 238 pounds. Kuntz is under 250s.
Yeah. So I mean, the Broncos just cut another relatively good undrafted guy in Hudson, who I think would be a good ad for either one of your teams. because he's a combination pass catcher and inline blocking tight end, just not quite as good as Atkins, but still a good tight end. And so if you're looking for a well-rounded player, he's a good, well-rounded player, even as a rookie. And like those are guys you want because then you can develop them. Like, coach, that's exactly what your whole point is, which is you bring in a young guy that looks good, and then you develop them to then have them become great, and they're cheap. Yeah. So it's like a win-win. Like it's a win-win for your team.
Right. Yeah, Zach, I believe that he does have to make a serious run here, and I think he does not, I think he's gone, and I think Kellen Moore is the head coach. That's my early take on it. You got to look at it from this perspective. Like you have to look at it from
the horn thing, don't you, over there?
What's that?
You have the horn thing on your little sound bar there.
Oh yeah. What? Yeah, breaking news, right?
Yeah.
Again, you have to look at it from a perspective like they chose Staley over Brian Daboll. They interviewed both, and they went with Staley, and they get a bit of an egregious mistake. I'm going with a defensive guy who's honestly and truly, I'm just going to be critical, a defensive-minded head coach who defense hasn't been good the entire time he's been there. And you've had time to build personnel, get guys that you like, and get people in your scheme that you really want to utilize to make your defense work, right? So that's an issue. So if the defense isn't better, one, and we don't make a deep playoff run, two, I think we pivot. We take an offensive-minded head coach, make Kellen Moore the head coach, and he'll let it revamp his staff, and we start over. I think that's where he lands. Because I think the GM has to look at it from the perspective that if he doesn't make any wholesale changes and keep this team trending in the right direction, he could be out of a job. So I think those things are
usually go in pairs. So
right, exactly. I think those things are on the table for sure this season. I believe that.
I agree, and I think your GM has the benefit of being able to go to the ownership and say, "But I brought in the next head coach already."
Was that who's doing was that though? That's the thing. Like I don't know who's doing that was. I think that might have been Telesco's doing.
No, but he's your. You mean your owner?
Are you saying who brought Kellen Moore in?
Yeah, well, I think that was your GM who brought Moore in.
I agree. No, I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, like I think like
really was saying that. I see what you're saying now. I got
right.
you. Yeah,
so how does the GM future-proof his job, right? He says, I already got the next guy in the building. Thank you very much.
And make it even easier for a transition.
Right. Exactly.
And I save my job. He wins. I save my job. Justin Herbert flourishes. Where everything's good in Charger land.
CYA.
There you go.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking has probably happened there for the Chargers.
I'm trying to sell it that way. I mean, if it goes bad enough, they can just clean house.
I think Kellen Moore would be safe in the simple fact that the offense is much better this year from last year, and then he's safe. And they just look at him as the next, heir apparent if Staley's defense and the team does not perform up to the expectations that the front office has.
Let's put it this way: the one thing that Broncos can't really blame Fangio for was a bad defense. Our defense always looked good. Like our defense was ridiculous.
One thing you can't do. You can do a lot of things.
Yeah.
What you cannot do is blame Fangio's.
No. No. So, but coach, that's exactly what your point is, though, right? Which is look, it was clear that Fangio's team did not do well. But you looked at the defense, and they were putting up like top 5 stats.
And that makes sense,
right?
Because it's the total opposite with the Chargers. The offense has been good since Staley's been there, but the defense hasn't, and that's your niche. That's your lane.
That's your baby, dude.
Yeah. So why are we so bad on defense, and then the offense is still good?
Right. And so this will be an interesting season, I think, for your head coach, which is to say, all right. Does he now just feel comfortable that the offensive coordinator now knows what they're doing so he can then refocus exclusively on the defense?
I sure hope so.
Because if he can't do that, I completely agree with you. He's gone.
Yeah, and again, I have some angst about what Staley had in his successful run to a head coaching job versus what he has in LA. Because you had Khalil Mack when you were in Chicago. Game-changing, generational talent. You had prime Khalil Mack. You had prime Aaron Donald. So it's Jalen Ramsey.
Remember Staley was with Fangio too.
Right. So again, look at
I think he was in Denver with Fangio.
He was. He was. So again, you have prime talent on your Pro Bowl level talent in every facet.
Von Miller.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Oh.
I guess he felt like he might have had that with with Bosa being here and then bringing in Mac, but yet again, we hadn't seen it yet. So
right.
Again, he needs to get. I think he should know that at this point he has to get it right and right the ship. If he does not, then it's the season's gonna get real hot real fast.
I agree. So unfortunately, guys, for whatever reason, Jack had a real issue with his internet connection there, which is to be expected given the power outages I'm sure that are occurring there in Florida with the hurricanes and what have you. It's just unfortunate we weren't able to round out the show with the additional Raiders take. But we will have Raiders information for you next show. Alex and Coach, you guys have your fantasy draft podcast coming up.
That we do.
Would you like to go ahead and give that a little plug?
Yes.
Sorry, I'm in the middle of picking here.
Oh
I
yeah,
was going to get Josh Jacobs, but I
got it covered. The Lightning Fast Fantasy Podcast is coming to you live next week, September 6th, each and every Wednesday at 9:30. So right after the show, we will be doing a fantasy football podcast for Standard Leagues, PPR, and Dynasty League information. So if you're tired of losing in fantasy football, you need to get yourself going, and you're trying to get all the last place and have to carry that flag to say, I suck in fantasy football. Come on over to our channel at 9:30 on Wednesdays, and we'll give y'all our best opinions and get you right when it comes down to fantasy football each and every Wednesday throughout the season at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Check us out. Follow us on all social medias, and we will be giving you our best advice on how to win that bag.
And Jack, I will have a channel for you to subscribe to here soon. All right.
And there it is. Mic drop.
Arrowhead Alex.
Yeah. Hey.
I think
that's it.
I do want to quickly speak to this real quick just before we sign off, ladies and gentlemen. So, Jack, I am in rare air in Broncos country, a very small. Let's just say I'm one of very few that actually liked Fangio as a head coach. I actually think that he brought a form of discipline that you saw from the players, and the players didn't like him because he was very old school and kind of that, get to work, get off my front lawn kind of mental mentality.
Gran Torino, old school.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. But what you saw from his defensive players is he couldn't have been that bad. They all follow him everywhere. Literally, wherever he goes, he's got a core group of players that say, sign me up, coach. And so he obviously isn't that bad on the defensive side of the ball. So let's just be honest. And I think a lot of players want to play for a coach that can actually make them better. He can certainly make them better. In my opinion, what you saw from Fangio as well as some of our other head coaches since was I think you saw a front office primarily led by John Elway that undermined the players and the people that they needed and actually to run their schemes and what they were trying to do. So you had an offensive mind coming in who played, say, a power scheme, and they brought in guys that were zone. Well, that's not going to work. And then the other guy came in and said, all right, we're running zone. And they said, well, here's a bunch of power guys. It's like, okay, like someone needs to pull their head out of their rear and actually start learning how to scout. Right? Is really what it comes down to. And so we saw a bunch of mismatched stuff. And actually, if you're going to be honest, some of the Broncos offseason moves, like McGlinchey actually comes from a more zone style blocking scheme. And Peyton doesn't actually run a pure zone style blocking scheme. So McGlinchey even has to make some transitionary pieces in order to actually fit well into a Sean Payton offense. But that's going into the weeds a little bit more, and certainly not something that we're going to delve into at the back end of the Wild Wild West podcast as we're about to sign off. But those are some examples of why I'm actually a fan, and I think that there's so much more to it than just, oh, that guy was trash. You need to actually look at all things together when you're making those assessments, because it's way too easy to just point the finger and walk away.
Do it. Do it.
Yeah. But anyways, guys, that's going to do it for the Wild West podcast tonight. We got another great show for you lined up next week. We're going to delve right into each of our week 1 games. Week one, baby. And we're going to go right down that rabbit hole and break down all of our week 1 opponents. Alex, I'm watching the KC game.
I would hope so. It's the only one.
It's
the only one on that day. It's going to be a good one.
Yeah. And so anyways, guys, until next week, where the West Side is the best side, we will see you later. Peace.
Even when you feel low, you can still go. Even when you feel slow, you can still go. Even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go.